Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to talk about a question prompted by Professor Dungeon Master's latest video, which was on should you make your Dungeons and Dragons? Should you make? Yeah, actually, he was talking about dungeon mastering, right? Like he uses GM in there, and he's trying to break away from Dungeons and Dragons. But he made a mistake and said Dungeon Master in the middle of, like, secretly, he don't care about nothing but Dungeon Master, right? So he's talking about dungeon mastering. He uses the GM every now and then, but then he forgets and he literally says Dungeon Master because that's what he means in his heart. And we all know Dungeon Masters matter, Game Masters don't matter. Like, they're a dime a dozen. You can get them anywhere. They're useless, right? Dungeon Masters are everything. Like, and I think Professor Dungeon Master knows that. Like, yeah, okay. But he did a great video. It was a great video. And essentially he said, and you can shove in whatever words you want. He's talking about Dungeons and Dragons. So he said, hey, should you make your Dungeons and Dragons game cruelty-free if you get a request from a player who is a vegan, right? Because, like, and so basically what happened is in a game, a player butchered a pig in the game, and this vegan is like, hey, I'm not cool with that, man. Like, I want this to be a cruelty-free game. But this player had come in after the other player. So so this vegan player was requesting this from, and we had a situation. So vegan player is requesting this. Non-vegan player is already in the game. So, first of all, watch Professor Dungeon Master's excellent video. It's really fantastic. And he has a really unique answer, right? Now, I have a different... so here's where I want to go. The question here is, how do you prioritize which players' requests are fulfilled, right? So when you have two players, and those two players both want opposite things, how do you decide which player gets what they want and which player can go kick rocks? Right? So that's what I want to answer today. Is I want to answer, how do you prioritize which player gets what they want and which player can go kick rocks and gets not what they want and does not get what they want, right? And I'm Scott Garibay. We ain't gonna do no, split the Gordian knot answers here. We're gonna pick, right? White, black, right? Like, we're gonna have a hard answer. Right, not do both or sit on the fence or whatever. Right, a hard answer here. Let's go. All right. So here we go. So basically, this can happen, right? So where two players want different things. So first of all, let's just get into this. Should you treat your players equally? Absolutely not. Now, you should absolutely hierarchy your players and treat them quite differently. And the reason why is their value at your table is vastly different, and you shouldn't treat them the same because their value is different, right? So first of all, here's the hierarchy. So first of all, judgment, right? Like, your Bible says, judge not lest ye be judged, right? But it also said, there's a whole book of Proverbs, which is like, you should use discernment. And guess what? There's a lot of judgment and discernment, all right? It's the whole, So basically, when we judge people, right, we should never judge them on things from how they were born or their base nature, right? That's wrong. But we absolutely should judge them based on their actions, right? Okay, and I think this is how we do judgment correctly, right? So let's get into this. So if you have, let's say you have 5 players, okay? How do we rank them? How do we put one at the top and say, you get everything you want? And how do we put one at the bottom and say, I ain't never going to give you nothing unless nobody else is harmed, unless nobody else loses anything for you to get something, right? Your lowest hierarchy player. Let's get into it. All right, so how do you hierarchy your players? First of all, DMP, right? Dungeon Master Plausibility, okay? Is this person plausibly a dungeon master, okay? Now, first of all, you might be like, well, do they want to be a dungeon master? I don't give a rat's whether they want to be a dungeon master or not, right? And if somebody says, oh, I don't want to be a dungeon master, do not pay any attention to that. It doesn't matter if they want to be a dungeon master or not. All that matters is, do they have the capability of being a dungeon master, right? Because the reality is they can change, right? And if you're doing Dungeons and Dragons right, and you are running it at top tier levels, right, then what's going to happen is you will reach a point where you get to the point, yeah. So dungeon master plausibility, right? Do they have what it takes to be a good dungeon master? So first of all, what do you need to be a good dungeon master? You need to be intelligent, charismatic, and confident, right? That confident part, this is the biggest way to tell this, right? So let's talk about confidence. One, you have to be able to publicly speak. If the person cannot publicly speak, forget it. They're never going to be a decent dungeon master. Because dungeon mastering is fundamentally public speech, right? A lot of people don't understand that. I think that's one of the biggest secrets to why there is a deficit of dungeon masters. Are they charismatic? Are they intelligent? Are they confident? If they are not those three things, they're never going to be a good dungeon master. And they're never going to be a dungeon master, right? They might, and what does it mean to be a dungeon master? I'm talking 100. To be a dungeon master, you really need 100 sessions under your belt, right? Are they going to be able to get to 100? Because there are people who are going to dungeon master, they're going to do 2-3 sessions. Maybe they do 30 sessions, but they can't keep a table, right? They cannot attract people to a table, right? And they can't, and you really cannot keep a table without intelligence, charisma and confidence, right? And that's why there's a deficit of dungeon masters right now, and why there's no deficit of game masters, right? There's more than enough of those schmucks bouncing around, right? So basically, here's where we land, right? Is the person dungeon master plausible? Are they intelligent, creative, and are they intelligent, charismatic, and confident? Here's the other one. You could tell when they're DMing, dungeon mastering from a player seat. This is a big thing. One, if you're a dungeon master, you've probably done this a few times, where you're put into a player seat and you just take the campaign wherever you want, right? If you as a dungeon master are running your game and you are frequently surprised at the end of the game by what happened, you got a DMP, a dungeon master plausible player, a DMPP, right? And so you want to pay attention to that. It's important, okay? Next, ace or attending player, right? So DMPPs get what they want all the time, as much as possible, right? And you should really prioritize them getting what they want over other players, right? So like in this case, if this new player was a DMPP, yep, game's going cruelty free, right? But if that non-vegan barbecue eating player is a DMPP, that vegan could go kick rocks, man. It ain't gonna be a cruelty-free, cruelty-free game. All right, campaign. All right. Next, from the player perspective, are they an ace player or are they an attending player? Ace, right? Just like Top Gun, right? Top Gun Maverick. Maverick is an ace. He shot down five planes. An ace is an ace is a killer, right? An aviator killer, right? Is this player a killer player, right? They know how to share the spotlight. They know how to act. They know how to take the game in exciting directions, even though they may not. And this is okay. This is a person who's not a DMPP, right? You can have an ace player, and like a perfect example, right? You do not need to publicly speak to play your player character, right? To just be able to like pretend to be one person in a game, that doesn't take a lot of charisma, confidence, or intelligence, right? It's you're just controlling one other, identity. You're not controlling 100 other identities like a dungeon master, and you don't have to switch between them in seconds, right? It's not that hard, right? But being a player is its own distinct discipline, right? And you can do it at a incredibly gifted level, right? So are they an ace player or are they attending player, right? Like, oh, I'm glad you're here because you're filling that seat, and we needed a heal bot, right? We needed a cleric, right? Are they an ace player or an attending player? If they're an ace player, they're second in line, right? Once the DMPP's needs are met, then you can meet the ace player's needs, right? And last is seniority, right? Okay. So basically once the DMPP is taken care of, once the ace player is taken care of, at that point you're going to go to seniority, right? So if this new person coming in, the vegan, is not a DMPP, not an ace, right? And you've probably only had one session, right? Then the person who's already in the game, give them what they want, right? You should never prioritize somebody who comes in later in the game than somebody who was there from the start and helped to build the story from the start, right? So that's how you hierarchy players, and you give. And when two players want opposing things, DMPPs get DMPPs get fulfilled first. Ace players get fulfilled second, right? And then last, seniority players, right? And by the way, attending players are lower than only ace players should be put above seniority players who were there at the start, right? And I do think seniority should be very significantly honored, right? So if you got a new player coming in, they ain't DMPP, they ain't an ace, or they haven't had time to prove they're either one, right? Then you go with the person who was there at the start, right? And guess what? A bunch of pigs gonna get slaughtered up in the game, right? Every word of that is my humble opinion. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.